turn my mind to knowledge, oppose ideas, indoor and outdoor, and by the grace of God, fight for the right while working out for the future bright.
Be seated, please. Without wasting much time, it took a lot of time to get us to come together. Absolute silence, please. Absolute silence. Absolute silence. We recognize the person of the principal in absentia, Mr. Peter Osiki. Put your hands together for the principal. We recognize the person of the vice principal academic in absentia, Mrs. Igoro. Put your hands together for the vice principal. We recognize the person of the vice principal pastoral in absentia, the person of Mr. Meribel Chidima. Put your hands together for him. We recognize the person of the vice principal junior school in absentia, Mrs. Aluevo. Put your hands together for her. Assurance and Control Officer. We recognize her person in absentia, Ms. Justina. Put your hands together for her. We recognize the persons of all HODs, present and absent. Put your hands together for them. We recognize all our year tutors and educators. Put your hands together for them. Now to the dignitary and guest for tonight. After the talk we're about to have now, your questions will be answered by a trained nurse, a qualified and certified midwife, Mrs. Ubobo Oganatega. Please rise for recognition. Put your hands together for her. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you very much. I remain my humble self, Mr. Jude Otobrese, and I'm your anchor for this talk. Without wasting time, we are looking at a subject that is very much relevant to teenagers and adolescents. Now listen. This is not the kind of talk you get to hear on a regular basis. This talk has become paramount and essential because information empowers you to make right decisions. In the past, in the 19th century, issues like these were not frequently discussed between adults and children and adolescents. And because of that, a lot of adolescents and teenagers make mistakes that they would normally have avoided if they were properly guided and oriented. There's a community not too far away from us. That community is named Usiefrun Community. In that community, you will find 13-year-old girls, 14-year-old girls who are third and fourth wives. I'm not telling you fable. I'm not telling you a story that I was told. I know the community myself. 13, 14-year-old girls who are third wives already, who are fourth wives already, children whose lives are even yet to begin. third and fourth wives already. That's the reason we put this talk together. And the theme is adolescent reproductive and sexual health. The topic for this afternoon is teenage pregnancy. Teenage pregnancy. The first question that comes to mind when you hear the word teenage pregnancy is, who is a teenager? I could pause and ask you a question randomly. So I expect that you pay rapt attention. I could pause and ask you questions randomly. And when I do that, the camera will be beamed live at you. Remember that we are on air. I just need to inform you. In one of the sessions we have had here, we had a comment from a former state overseer, Pastor Soji Ajayi. The principal just told me this morning, he sent him the link. He's commenting all the way from Liberia. That pastor happened to be my state overseer when I was in Edo State in Uniben schooling. So a lot of persons are following us. So if I pause and I ask you a question, it will not be good if you are not following. A teenager is someone aged between 13 to 19 years. 13 to 19 years. Teen age. What about the word pregnancy? What does that mean? Pregnancy simply means growth and development of a fertilized female egg in the womb of a woman. In biological language, we say the word womb is uterus. So the growth and development of a fertilized egg, a fertilized ovum in the womb or uterus of a woman. Once the egg is fertilized, the name for it is zygote. Zygote is actually the stages of development for the developing human, the name for the developing human when it is 0 to 4 weeks old. After that, it is described as embryo. That's the term to describe the developing human when it is 4 to 8 weeks old. After that, it is called fetus. That's the name, that's the term, that's the language to describe the developing human when it is 8 weeks to birth. When it is 8 weeks old to birth. That's the language to describe it. Now, the pregnancy process. That means, how does pregnancy occur? What is it all about? What's involved? Now, there's nothing new here. I happen to work somewhere where I developed curriculum for primary schools, and I found this there, reproduction, completely explicitly discussed in the curriculum for primary school. How much more you who are in high school, secondary school. So there's nothing new in what I'm about to discuss now. Whether you are in JS1 or JS2 or SS3, this topic is as relevant to you as any other thing you will learn in school. The pregnancy process. Pregnancy involves 3 processes. Number 1, ovulation. Number 2, fertilization. And number 3, implantation. What's ovulation? Every month, the female releases an egg. It's called ovum from an organ called ovary. Females have 2 ovaries. So normally 1 egg or ovum is released from 1 ovary in each female menstrual cycle. Occasionally and rarely 2 eggs, 2 ova may be released. The release of the egg from the ovary is what is called ovulation. The female is normally born with the eggs or ova already in the ovary. With the eggs or ova already in the ovary. Once the female reaches teen age, becomes a teenager, the eggs start to ripen, and then they start being released one after the other. And the release of the egg, mature ovum, is what is described as ovulation. Now listen, if that egg is released and it is not fertilized means the woman is not married, so she did not meet a man. That egg will rupture, break up. The lining of the womb or uterus that was prepared before for pregnancy will also rupture. The ruptured egg, the lining of the uterus that has ruptured, everything flows out of the female birth canal, and we call that menstrual bleeding. Now, if the egg is released, and say the woman is maybe married and she meets a man, it's called sexual intercourse. The result is there is chance for pregnancy to take place. That's the next process, the next stage in how pregnancy develops. That's fertilization. Fertilization means the fusion or union of spermatozoa, sperm cell from a man, with the ovum or the egg released by the woman. Once this fusion takes place, the egg moves from where the fertilization has occurred to settle in the uterus. And that process is called implantation. Now look at the diagram, the picture on the screen. Okay. Maybe I'll move closer and try to describe. This is the female reproductive tract. You see those two wings, one going this way and one coming this way. My pointer is not responding. Let me dress closer to the picture. This is what I'm describing. I'm calling a wing. You see this? This is the ovary. And this on top is called fallopian tube. So once the egg is released from the ovary, it climbs to the fallopian tube and remains there. It is in the fallopian tube that fertilization takes place. How will that happen? Usually, during sexual intercourse, the spermatozoa from the male are deposited here. This opening is called the vagina. More than 20 million sperm cells are deposited here. That's diagram, please. Good. More than 20 million sperm cells are deposited here. But not all of them will fertilize the egg that has been released now in the fallopian tube. So the 20 million sperm cells begin to swim up from the vagina. They get here. This is the uterus, which is the womb. They will cross. There's a lot of barrier between here and up there. This environment is membrane-lined, is full of mucus. So the sperm cells begin to swim up and up and up until they get to where the egg is, and only one fuses with the egg. Once that fusion takes place, the eggshell membrane, cell membrane, will change its conformation and handing so that no other sperm cell can penetrate. In other words, life is a competition, which means before you were born, you actually competed with more than 20 million potential boys and girls. Any of them could have come into the world instead of you. You are the one that won the ultimate race. Put your hands together for yourself. Now, once that fusion or union has taken place, the fertilized egg now, which we call zygote, will travel from this lining and come to the uterus and settle down. Settling of the fertilized egg in the uterus is what we call ovulation. Now, once it has settled, it begins to develop. The growth and development of the fertilized egg is what we now call pregnancy. A little girl, a teenage girl, had appendicitis and went to the hospital to get appendicectomy. That means surgical removal of the appendix. Appendix is a part of the large intestine. Unfortunately, the doctor carried out wrong surgery and ended up cutting off one of the girl's fallopian tubes. You see the importance of the fallopian tube? That's where fertilization takes place. So if there is no fallopian tube, it means that girl has been rendered barren for life. Luckily for that girl, God provided her with two. So her chances of conception now are actually 50-50. The doctor has succeeded in reducing it to 100. So information about your reproductive health actually empowers you. It doesn't matter if you are going to take into biological line or if you are going to be in the humanities. You need to know. Tell somebody beside you, you need to know. Now you are aware of the pregnancy process. It begins with ovulation. Then the next thing is fertilization. And after that, implantation. The next slide, please. Okay, this is actually a video clip that enhances what I have just described. May we have it played, please? It's about 4 minutes. Just listen. Audio, please. Play it again from the beginning with the audio. From the beginning, please.
Fertilization is the epic story of a single sperm facing incredible odds to unite with an egg and form a new human life. It is the story of Dlhs. During sexual intercourse, about 300 million sperm enter the vagina. Soon afterward, millions of them will be thrown out of the vagina or die in its acidic environment. However, many survive because of the protective element provided in the fluids surrounding it. Next, the sperm must pass through the cervix and open into the uterus. Usually, it remains tightly closed, but here the cervix is open for a few days while the woman ovulates. The sperm swim through the cervical mucus, which is thin to a watery consistency for easier passage. Once inside the cervix, the sperm continues swimming toward the uterus, though many of them die trying to make it through the mucus. Some sperm remain behind, caught in the folds of the cervix, but they may later continue the journey as a backup to the first group. Inside the uterus, muscular uterine contractions assist the sperm on their journey toward the air. However, resident cells in the woman's immune system mistaking the sperm for foreign invaders destroy thousands more. Next, half the sperm carefully emptied over the tube, while the other half swims into the tissue containing the infertile pair. Now, only 3,000 remain. Inside the fallopian tube, tiny cells push the egg toward the uterus. To continue, the sperm must surge against this motion to reach the egg. Some sperm get trapped in the cilia and die. During this part of the journey, chemicals in the reproductive tract cause the membranes covering the egg for the sperm to change. As a result, the sperm become hyperactive, swimming harder and faster toward their destination. At long last, the sperm reach the egg. Only a few dozen of the original 300 their apple stones to release digestive enzymes, enabling the sperm to go into the layer. Inside the cell, the lucida is an narrow, fluid-filled space just outside the egg cell membrane. The first sperm to make contact will fertilize the egg. After a perilous journey and against incredible odds, a single sperm attaches to the egg cell membrane. Within a few minutes, their outer membranes fuse and the egg pulls the sperm inside. This event causes changes in the egg membrane that prevent other sperm from attaching to it. Next, the egg releases chemicals that push other sperm away from the egg and create an impenetrable fertilization membrane. As the reaction spreads outward, the zone lucida hardens, trapping any sperm unlucky enough to be caught inside. Outside the egg, sperm are no longer able to attach to the zone lucida. Meanwhile, inside the egg, the tightly packed male genetic material spreads out.
A new membrane forms around the genetic material, creating the male pronucleus. Inside, the genetic material reforms into 23 chromosomes. The female genetic material, awakened by the fusion of the sperm with the egg, finishes dividing, resulting in the female pronucleus, which also contains 23 chromosomes. As the male and female pronuclei form, spiderweb-like threads called microtubules pull them toward each other. The two sets of chromosomes join together, completing the process of fertilization. At this moment, a unique genetic code arises, instantly determining gender, hair color, eye color, and hundreds of other characteristics. This new single cell, the zygote, is the beginning of a new human being. And now the cilia in the fallopian tube gently sweep the zygote toward the uterus, where he or she will implant in the rich uterine lining, growing and maturing for the next 9 months until ready for birth.
Okay. When initially I told you more than 20 million spermatozoa are deposited in the vagina. But the clip says, how many million? Who will tell me now? How many million? I want one person to respond. Come and have the mic.
300.
Thank you very much. 300 million. Where will this sperm cell meet the egg? Where? Where? Who knows? Come and tell me.
In the fallopian tube.
Thank you very much. In the fallopian tube. Now, the next slide. Now you know how pregnancy occurs. Now let's talk about, is it good for a teenager to actually be pregnant, considering that at that age you ought to be in school? Is it good? So why is it then that we now have some teenagers who are carrying pregnancies when they ought to be in school? Which means we're looking now at the causes of teenage pregnancy. Remember in that community I told you 13, 14-year-old girls are third and fourth wives. It is bad enough for a 13-year-old girl to be married, let alone when she is now a third wife or a fourth wife. What kind of life is that? Causes of teenage pregnancy. Number one, at this juncture, I'm going to go biblical. Galatians 5:19. The first cause, number one cause, works of the flesh. Galatians 5, verse 19. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these. Number one, adultery. Number two, fornication. Number three, uncleanness. Number four, lasciviousness. Those are, number one, causes of teenage pregnancy, works of the flesh. Adultery. That's actually between a married man and another woman, married or unmarried. Fornication between two persons unmarried. Then it talks about uncleanness, lust, impure thought, pornography. Then it talks about lasciviousness. All of them in the same family. 1 John chapter 2. And I'm going to read verse 16. 1 John chapter 2, verse 16. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. You see lust repeating itself 3 times. Lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life. Number 2 cause of teenage pregnancy: lack of information about sexuality. Many persons are ignorant. Many girls don't know their right as to what they should know about sexuality. Not even girls alone. Many boys too are ignorant. That's because many adults don't find it easy to discuss issues like this with teenagers. Lack of information. But you are no longer in that category because now you are being sensitized. When you have information, look up here. The reason many adults don't talk about this is because they think when they tell you, they spoil you. I know a lot. Does that make me spoiled? Answer me now. Does that make me spoiled? It is what you do with your knowledge that makes you a bad person. It is not what you know. Everybody has knowledge of good and evil. But it is the choices you now make with the knowledge you have that now tells that, okay, this is a bad man or this is a bad woman. So knowledge doesn't make you bad. It is what you do with knowledge that tells us that you are bad or good. Number 3 cause of teenage pregnancy: curiosity. Some people are interested in experimentation. I want to see what's there. I want to know what's there. I want to experience it. I want to try it for myself. I want to test it for myself. This thing called sex, I've had people talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. I must give it a try. Curiosity. Another reason is peer pressure. Peer pressure. It's very common among teenagers to find themselves putting the other under undue pressure. It begins like this: do you have a girlfriend? Have you had sex? Have you done this? Have you done that? And then, if you are the one who has not done any of those things they're asking you about, then they begin to put pressure on you. They call you maybe old school. They call you maybe you are not civilized. They give you all kinds of names. And the pressure they put on you now makes you feel, okay, it's better I try it so that I will feel I belong. Another thing is desire for money and material things. Some people crave too much for money. If you are too much in love with money, someone will use money to deceive you and lead you astray. Another cause is early marriage, like in that community that I just mentioned to you now. When girls are given out too early in marriage, then teenage pregnancy results. Another cause is sexual abuse. Sexual abuse like rape. Maybe the girl was ignorantly harassed and raped. It could cause teenage pregnancy. Sexual abuse can also be self-inflicted. If a girl is the type that dresses loosely, she's definitely going to be abused. If a girl is the type that dresses to expose her body, she's definitely going to be abused. Look up here. I had a lecturer, anatomy lecturer, when I was in the University of Benin. He was traveling to Abraka town from Benin. Unfortunately, the vehicle he boarded was stopped on the highway by armed robbers. So they were searching the vehicle and collecting the belongings of all the passengers in the vehicle. Every item they wanted, they collected. Phones, money, they collected. As they were going around, they saw a girl who was loosely dressed. she was wearing what I call a singlet. You have another name for it. What do you call it? Okay, you call it spaghetti. Whether spaghetti or indomie or macaroni, I don't care. But what I know is it's a singlet. And ideally, if I appear to you here now and I'm putting on a singlet, would that be right? That wouldn't be right. She was wearing a singlet and a trouser, and the trouser, to make matters worse, was torn all over. What do you call what's the name for that type of trouser? Okay, whatever the name you have for it. That's what that lady was wearing. To now make matters worse, the lady was actually beautiful. So she presented herself in a seductive manner to the armed robbers. You know what the armed robbers did? After they had raided the vehicle and robbed every passenger, they brought the girl out. And they took turns, 4 of them, they took turns to rape the girl in broad daylight, in the very all-seeing eye of every passenger. And as they were taking turns to rape the girl, she was crying. You know what one of them said? "Shut up there. Is this the first time you are doing it? The way you are dressed tells us that you have done it before." There were other girls in that vehicle. They didn't touch them. Why? Those girls were decently dressed. One cause of teenage pregnancy is sexual abuse. And sexual abuse, more often than not, is self-inflicted. If you present yourself as a girl, as a sex object, the male responds to what he sees. What you give out is what they will give you. The way you present yourself, that's how you'll be addressed. That girl learned a very bitter lesson, something that could have been avoided if she was properly dressed. What's another cause of teenage pregnancy? This one is not for you. This is for adults. So this is just bypass information, not using contraceptive. Contraceptive is any method that prevents pregnancy from occurring even after sexual intercourse. Now, for teenagers, all unmarried young boys and girls, the contraceptive method that we advocate as peer educator trainers is abstinence. Abstinence means you stay away. You keep yourself until you are married to a man or you are married to a woman. That is the contraceptive method recommended for teenagers or someone unmarried by biblical point of view. Another cause of teenage pregnancy is risky behavior. Risky behavior like abuse of substance abuse, like drug abuse, like alcoholism. Under the influence of these substances, people lose control of their emotions, of their self, and then they misbehave. They could end up raping someone, and then teenage pregnancy could result. Another cause of teenage pregnancy is inability to manage hormonal impulses. As you are now, as an adolescent, as a teenager, your bodies are actually hormone factories. You are producing a lot of what we call sex hormones. In the males, there is testosterone. It is responsible for the male's sexual characteristics. When the male starts developing a deep voice, all the signs they taught you in puberty, this hormone called testosterone is responsible for bringing those out in the male. In the females, there are 2 hormones. We have estrogen and then progesterone. They are also responsible for all the signs you see in a girl when she reaches puberty, all developmental signs. Sometimes, on rare occasions, some females produce testosterone. Testosterone makes males to look masculine and then responsible for the beards, the hair that they grow all over. So if a female is producing high amount of testosterone, she also begins to grow beards, even on the chest and on the face like the men. Have you seen girls like that before? Okay, that's the answer to that question. They are producing testosterone, which is a sex hormone. Now, these sex hormones, they press your buttons. What do I mean by press your buttons? They are the substances or triggers responsible for the sexual urge that you feel. You see a boy, you see a girl, maybe you like the person, you are attracted to the person. These sex hormones are responsible. Now, having that feeling itself is not bad. As a matter of fact, if you don't have the feeling, something is wrong with you. What it means is that you cannot get married. As a matter of fact, it is God who put those feelings inside of you. So having the feelings is not wrong at all. God put it there for the purpose of marriage. It is when you abuse it, then you sin against God. But you see, as an ordinary natural man, when you come under the impulse, the influence of these sex hormones, you cannot control yourself. You need a stronger power to help you put yourself in check once you are under hormonal impulses. I will tell you about that when I come to the cure. Now let's talk about the second thing. Consequences of teenage pregnancy. The next slide, please. Consequences of teenage pregnancy on boys and girls. Let's take the first part, the consequences on girls. Number one, there's depression, there's sadness. When you see a female, a girl who is pregnant when she ought not to be, she feels so ashamed, she feels so depressed, she cannot come out openly again among her peers, she starts going into hiding, she becomes depressed and sad. Number two, there's loss of virginity and pride. You see, look up here. In ancient times, in the history of the Israelites, in ancient times, if a girl was pregnant before she was given out in marriage, do you know what the penalty was? They stoned that girl to death. They just grab the girl, bring her out, and can you imagine how painful that kind of death is? For people to be releasing stone at a person, stone, until the person drops dead. It's excruciating pain. Now, fast forward to present day. You can find that account in the Bible. Genesis chapter 34, verses 1, verse 2. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 15 to 21. The account I'm describing to you now. If you try that thing in modern time, it means you will kill, I don't want to exaggerate, you might just be killing 40 or 50% of the world's population of teenage girls. Because the rate at which sexual promiscuity, the rate of sexual promiscuity now among teenagers in the world is alarmingly high. What's another consequence of teenage pregnancy on girls? Low self-esteem. You lose your self-worth. Your self-worth. Let me tell you something about boys. Look up here. You see what boys do? Wicked boys. When they go about deceiving girls, they will be keeping a register, a diary, where they fill the names of every girl they have met with. They fill the names there. And then they'll take it and go and discuss among their peers. As they're discussing about that girl, they'll tell, you see that girl? I've seen her. You see this one? I've seen everything. Girl will lose her self-esteem, her self-worth. What's another consequence of teenage pregnancy? Stigmatization. There's no teenager who is pregnant who will be proud to come out and shout it, especially if she's not married, that I am pregnant. No. They always go into hiding because of the stigma, the shame associated with it. What's another consequence? Early motherhood. The girl becomes a mother when she is not ready to be one. What's another consequence? Drop out of school. That girl definitely has to stop schooling. You cannot take pregnancy to school. What's another consequence? Poverty. When the girl has no skill, no trade, no job, no means of livelihood, now she has a child to take care of. She has put herself on the line, on the path to poverty. What's another consequence? There's the risk of contracting sexually transmitted infections. Very many, including HIV and AIDS. What's another consequence? Difficult delivery of the baby. Because the girl's body is not well developed to carry and deliver the baby. Now look up here. I told a cross-section of you guys this story before, but I didn't tell some others. So I'm going to tell everybody now. I was in the medical lab one afternoon, and then a woman came in with her 13-year-old girl. If you're a 13-year-old here, put your hand up. 13, put your hand up. 12, put your hand up. Okay, that person is in your age bracket. 14, put your hand up. Okay, that's okay. Which means we have 12-year-olds, we have 13-year-olds, we have 14-year-olds represented here. So the person I'm talking about now is your age mate. This mother brought the girl into the lab and told us the girl is sick. So we started to run tests. We tried malaria, no result. Typhoid fever, no result. Tried other tests, no result. And then one of the lab scientists said, let's test this girl for pregnancy. Within me, I just said, well, it's not possible. Lo and behold, when that test came out, that 13-year-old girl was pregnant. Neither she nor the mother knew she was pregnant. Now, to make the matter worse, we sent the girl to the hospital to go and see the doctor. The reply and the report of the doctor is, this girl cannot even give birth. The way, if you see this girl, she was looking like I. Number one, very tiny. You will look at her, you say, this is very innocent. Some innocent persons are dangerous, very dangerous. The doctor said, this girl cannot give birth. It's either we get her to do abortion now, which is very risky to her life, or else it will have to force her birth canal open. You saw, please let's go backward to the picture of the female reproductive system. Now look at this. This is the vagina. That's the birth canal. When the female reaches puberty, this organ develops. It is until it reaches its full size that it is easy for the woman to give birth. The child normally comes out with the head. So if the girl is not fully developed, that opening would be very narrow. And so it will not be easy for the baby's head to come out, although the organ can expand. But there's a limit to which it can expand if the girl is not fully developed. So when the doctor examined the girl, he said, that opening is too narrow. To make this girl to give birth, if she's not going to give birth by abortion, to help her give birth, we'll have to cut, insert knife through, and cut her open. And both situations are dangerous to the girl's health. That's not the worst part of the story. Do you know who got that girl pregnant? One university undergraduate. That's not the worst part of the story. While this girl will be battling with that pregnancy and how to get it out, that university undergraduate will pick up another girl again, another ignorant girl somewhere, and deceive the girl again, and forget about this one that he has put her life at risk. That's the reason you need to be wise, most especially if you are a girl. What's another consequence of teenage pregnancy? There's a word called fistula. F-I-S-T-U-L-A-S. Fistulas in the plural. A fistula is an abnormal connection between two organs in the body. I'm going to describe two kinds of fistulas that are commonly associated with teenage pregnancy. Number one, vesicovaginal fistula. Number two, rectovaginal fistula. Vesicovaginal fistula is when there's connection between the urethra and the vagina. Urethra is the organ that passes urine out of the body. In the situation where the girl wants to give birth and the birth canal is too small, a tearing occurs. When the tearing occurs, it could tear and lead to connection between the urethra and the vagina. In this situation, urine begins to leak from the urethra, urinary bladder, into the vagina and out of the body. And when that girl passes by you, she'll be smelling wee everywhere. Very common. Visit public hospitals, you see teenagers giving birth every day, and they are having tears, fistulas. The second fistula, rectovaginal fistula. That's when there's a connection between the rectum and the vagina. The rectum is the section of the large intestine just before the anus. That is where feces is stored. Then when you feel pressed, you want to empty the bowels, you visit the toilet, the feces comes out through the anus. Sometimes, pressure of giving birth can lead to a tear and a connection between the rectum and the vagina. And in this situation, feces will leak into the vagina and out of the body. And if that girl passes by you, she's smelling what? She's smelling poo. Trust me, you don't want to be in that kind of condition. You know what will happen to those kind of persons to rectify that? Surgery means the vagina will be sutured, sewed. The portion where there's a tear will now be sewed up, stitched by a medical doctor. Is that a good experience for someone to go through? Another consequence of teenage pregnancy is death during delivery. Another consequence of teenage pregnancy is death from attempted abortion. Now look up here. I know a young man who was in the secondary school like you are now, maybe 15, 16. He had a girl in his neighborhood. When this girl began to bleed, you know what the young man did?